Any media today. I got Reef Breland sitting next to me.
At Kennedy News.
Is Andrew Rivera on The Handsome Cynic?
It's Politics is Survival.
My name is Jesse Jett.
It's American Tradition.
What's up, Space Monkeys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden.
I mostly make art for INN.
Big Man Crab Joe. Keep up those great videos.
Hey guys, it's Yeti coming at you.
Hello, my name is Lucy from Blue Moon Red Wine.
This is Chris Legion.
Keep fighting that good fight out there, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Who are these people?
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight on Bread and Circuses episode 2. Got a good show for you tonight. A little bit different, not necessarily the most current of events, but something that's happening to us every single day and something we need to keep track of. So to start off with, I'm just going to kind of get into it with a tweet that kind of prompted me to kind of start this discussion. So basically, you guys might be familiar with him. This guy, Jordan Sheraton, who's known for doing actually really good coverage on Flint, Michigan, with the water crisis. He also did, he's been doing stuff on East Palestine, done some stuff with the worker organizing with like Amazon movement and stuff like that. But he's kind of showing his partisan colors recently and had this crazy tweet, which let's go bring it up, where basically he decided that something that RFK said the other day was a quack conspiracy, and kind of prompted me to kind of expose that a little bit. So give me just a second here. Let me show my screen here. We'll share the audio. All right. So if you're on Twitter, you may have seen this, but basically, well, let's close this for a second. So basically, Jordan said, it's truly mind-blowing. So many people buy the complete delusional BS RFK Jr. is selling. His latest gem, chemical and kids' waters are turning them trans. Now, that's not, first off, I am not giving credence to Jordan Peterson, who was interviewing RFK, nor am I really giving props to RFK as like a presidential candidate. If you guys saw me last week, you know that I am not the biggest fan of RFK, especially when it comes to his takes on Israel. But, today we're going to do a little bit of nuance and show that, broken clocks are still right twice a day. So I'm going to play this clip. Again, Jordan Peterson, world-class idiot. RFK, terrible on Israel, but he had some interesting things to say, and I wanted to explore it today. So let's get into it.
I've seen the climate apocalypse use fear to induce something approximating the same kind of level of tyranny, as far as I'm concerned, that characterized the vaccine lockdown. Help me sort that out and understand where you stand.
I see these huge levels of depression and despair, loneliness in kids. And I don't think that there's a single cause to it. And I think blaming it on, depression about climate is probably oversimplistic. And in fact, I think a lot of the problems we see in kids, and particularly boys, it's probably underappreciated that how much of that is coming from chemical exposures, including a lot of the sexual dysphoria that we're seeing. They're swimming through a soup of toxic chemicals today, and many of those are endocrine disruptors. There's atrazine throughout our water supply. Atrazine, by the way, if you in a lab put atrazine in a tank full of frogs, it will chemically castrate and forcibly feminize every frog in there, and 10% of the frogs, the male frogs, will turn into fully viable females able to produce viable eggs. If it's doing that to frogs, it could. There's a lot of other evidence that it's doing it to human beings as well.
I've seen the climate.
All right, so just to start off with that, guys, nothing RFK said there is wrong, like out the gate. He's not doing any misinformation or anything there. He's speaking through. We'll get into this today. There's a lot of evidence to support what he's saying. Now, no. That being said, big preface. I am not trying to say as we go through this that the chemicals in the water supply are creating trans kids. That's not what I'm trying to say. However, it's clear, and I'll go through it because it's so easy. There's decades of research showing that there's endocrine disrupting chemicals in our water and food supply that's being used on a daily basis that is changing the way that our reproductive organs function and develop. So Jordan wants to pretend he's invoking the freaking, oh, well, Alex Jones is turning the frogs gay sort of thing. And he's just completely blowing it off. I even responded to his clown. You know, I said, where's my, I said, how the fuck is a journalist whose claim to fame was his excellent coverage of the Flint crisis, because I will give him credit where credit's due, not be concerned about chemicals in our drinking water? If you could stop being a partisan for like 2 seconds, there's plenty of stories in your wheelhouse that need your reporting. And that's kind of where I got the idea to do this today, because there is so much information about what's going on with our water and food supply today. And because, as you guys know, there's very little regulation with with the way the corporations can get away with in this country. Like, you know, just a sidebar, the ingredients for food in the UK versus the same food that's made in the US is entirely different, because places in Europe and the UK have higher regulations than they do in the US. You know, it's like that thing where you go to a Mexican restaurant and you get the Mexican Coke, because the Mexican Coke is actually made with cane sugar and it's not made with corn syrup. So there are actual differences. And so again, I started off, thanks Jordan for, you know, being a partisan and refusing to take up something that's impacting not just people in Flint, not just people in East Palestine, but people literally in the entire country. 330 million Americans are impacted by this stuff every single day. When you go and take your shower, it's impacting you. When you go and get a glass of water, whether you're going through a filter or not, it's impacting you. And you could have been born into something. There's evidence that people who are taking EDCs that are now banned, we're seeing those repercussions of that today. You know, stuff that happened decades ago. So, Jordan, if you happen to see a clip of this, I want to show you how easy it is to dig up tons of studies, tons of information on how endocrine disrupting chemicals, and mainly what he's talking about, atrazine, is in our water, and it is impacting our reproductive function. So with that being said, I don't want to make this a referendum on Jordan. I just think that he has like a really huge missed opportunity here. And so that being said, a lot of this stuff, I am not an environmental scientist. I am not like this guy who knows tons of this stuff. So like, this is going to be a high level overview for me, but I just meant to show that most of my sources coming from the National Institute of Health. They're coming from government websites. They're coming from studies that have been going on for decades. So to kind of get into it, let's first start off with, the frogs are gay. So obviously, Alex Jones got banned off of YouTube many years ago. So he cannot actually, you can't find that clip anymore. You can't find that actual clip anymore. So what I'm finding is like jokesters who made these clips. And so I'm just going to play through them and kind of set the stage for this salacious crap that Jordan Chariton based his viewpoints on, and then show that, yes, Alex Jones is incredibly hyperbolic and says crazy stuff, but under that crazy stuff are nuggets of truth. And maybe if we took the time to not paint everybody with a broad brush and play team sports, we'd be able to get beyond, refusing to acknowledge certain topics. So let me go ahead and pick up a couple of these Alex Jones clips. They are, like I said, they're not the originals because they're very hard to find. Let's see. Okay, so we'll start with this. All right. So he looks absolutely ridiculous. Also, this was when he was doing, it was Halloween. So after he had said, this happened after he had said the thing about the atrazine was turning the frogs gay, he even kind of made fun of it and did this stupid little skit. So we'll play a little bit of it.
Look at me, I'm a gay frog. I'm so cool, I'm so neat. I'll never have children and I'm sterilized. But the media says I'm totally cool. I'm a gay frog, I'm a gay fish. It's so good, and I think my daddy Atrazine.
Shocked by it, so I'm up here bashing it because I don't like gay people. I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap.
Thanks to Atrazine, there'll be no more frogs. But we're gay, so it's cool. Thanks, Atrazine. Frogs aren't gay. Atrazine's good. There's not a chemical program to reduce fertility. InfoWars is sorry. Please let us back on Twitter. Google, let us back on. We're sorry. Frogs are not gay. Atrazine is good. InfoWars bad. Thank you, tech leader.
So ridiculous.
Before we go to our special guest, Atrazine, I wanted you to hear from one of our biggest supporters, David Hogg. He understands the bigoted, anti-Semitic, racist hatred of people like Alex Jones that have warned that frogs are becoming sterilized and gay from major scientific studies. Of course we are. It's so cool. Let's hear from David Hogg first. Oh, David.
For example, on InfoWars, one of the main things that he spoke, one of his famous things is saying that, one of his most famous statements was saying that tap water is turning the frogs gay and it will turn you gay too.
All right, so that's probably good for that clip. So, and also we know about David Hogg being a huge fucking op, so I don't even want to give him too much attention. There is another clip I want to show. So, yeah, then that wasn't. It's very hard to find the whole clip. Like I tried to go on InfoWars, I tried to go on band.tv. It's hard to find these clips. So they definitely got memory hold. It's unfortunate that I had to find like some partisans who made these like clips just to make him look like a fool. And again, he did that clip on Halloween, so he was making fun of it. And at the same time, it kind of begs the question, like, if it's such an important topic, why would Alex Jones kind of marginalize the importance of the topic by dressing up in a costume and making fun of it? It's not the greatest look. I wish he kind of kept his integrity about it. But like, if you guys have ever watched Alex Jones, you know he's hyperbolic as hell, and that's just part of his persona. Now there was this other video where he was on, Jake Paul? So I'm gonna play this really quick because he kind of gives a really quick, like 1 minute rundown of Atrazine. Also, not a big fan of the Paul kids, but it's something to check out. So we'll listen to this really quick. All right, so 138. Let's see, give me 1 second here, fellas and ladies. All right, come on.
I don't know what to expect. I mean, I just know that you guys are super popular. I've been hearing about you for years, and I've seen how they try to restrict your free speech, which is a bunch of bull, and try to misrepresent what you do. And so it's just good to be here and actually see the real McCoy.
Yeah, man, it's happening.
And you got that badass big man over there.
Evan, let's go.
Come right over here and see me. Go on. I'm going to go grab him and bring him over here. He might beat me up.
Evan's tough, bro.
Yeah.
Evan's
I believe he'll punch me right in the...
He might.
Right in the dick.
What you got in the cup, Alex?
I've got some of this water you gave me.
I go, Alex, you need anything? You want any water or anything? He goes, hard liquor. I'm like, all right, I got you. I'll join you.
Speaking of which, where is that?
Where's that?
Is it around?
I like the little sweater it's wearing.
All right, hold on. I apologize, guys. I need to find, I don't know where that time was on the Atrazine clip. Give me just a second here while I pull this up, because he does actually talk about it really quick. Give me just a moment here. I thought it was at 1 minute and 38. Maybe it was 1 minute and 1 hour and 17. Maybe it was a lot farther around here. Give me 1 second, guys.
I went there, took a piss. It came in. It was no pre-scripting.
Nope.
Zero. People literally think that everything I do is scripted.
They like.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I don't know. I had a timestamp on this. I don't know what the timestamp was at this point. Mad Crab, if you can remember what the timestamp, I have the clip pulled up. Mad Crab, if you could tell me what the timestamp was on where he talks about the atrazine, I'll go back to this clip. Otherwise, I will start getting into it. But Alex Jones, you know, he's broken it down in multiple times about you know, how the atrazine, basically there was a study, and it was done. What's ironic, which I found out today, was that this study was done by the guy who was hired by the company that makes this pesticide, the Syngenta. They're basically a competitor of Monsanto, and they use atrazine. They hired this guy Hayes to do this study, and the guy found out that it was feminizing frogs, and so he started distancing himself from it. So let's kind of get into a little bit of that. Hold on, I think I got one more thing here really quick I want to show you guys. Let's see. Oh yeah, so here's another one. This is actually the Hayes guy. So he this is the guy who did this
further analysis.
This is the guy who did the study that found out that not the frogs are gay, but that it is feminizing frogs.
Just supported the original finding. They became less interested in moving forward very quickly, and eventually they moved to asking me to manipulate data or to misrepresent data, and ultimately they told me I could not publish or could not talk about the data outside of their closed panel.
And Professor Hayes, talk about exactly what you found. What were the abnormalities you found in frog bending nature of this drug, atrazine?
Well, initially we found that the larynx or the voice box in exposed males didn't grow properly. And this was an indication that the male hormone testosterone was not being produced at appropriate levels. And eventually we found that not only were these males demasculinized or chemically castrated, but they also were starting to develop ovaries or starting to develop eggs. And eventually we discovered that these males didn't breed properly, that some of the males actually completely turned into females. So we had genetic males that were laying eggs and reproducing as females. And now we're starting to show that some of these males actually show, I guess, what we call homosexual behavior. They actually prefer to mate with other males.
Okay, so he didn't say it until the very end. So there is a nugget of truth to what he said about turning the frogs gay, although that's like the little piece. The big piece here, you know, not the salacious part, the big piece here is that it's feminizing these animals. You know, frogs have really thin skin, they're in water all the time, they get exposed to this atrazine, it literally changes their organs. So again, the idea that it's just a complete conspiracy theory is not grounded in science. Like the science is there to support this. So let's kind of go in a little bit of a history of Tyrone Hayes, who started this study. And this study, by the way, was done like in 1998 or something like that. And he's been working on this stuff for the last 15 years. If there's an expert on this stuff, it's this Tyrone Hayes guy. Okay. And he was hired, again, he was hired by the company that uses atrazine because they wanted, you know, you think they'd want a study that came out that said, oh, we know what we're doing, like this stuff's healthy, this stuff's safe, and it couldn't be further from the truth. So there's this great New Yorker article, which I'm going to go into a little bit, that kind of highlights what happened with Hayes and with this company Syngenta, and then we'll kind of go into atrazine and so on and so forth. So give me just a second here. Let's see. All right. So look at the article. This article was done back in 2014. Okay. So valuable reputation after Tyrone Hayes said that a chemical was harmful, its maker pursued him. Okay. So Syngenta, one of the largest agribusinesses in the world, had asked Hayes to conduct experiments on the herbicide atrazine, which is applied to more than half of the corn in the United States. It's now like 80%. Hayes was 31, and he had already published 20 papers on endocrinology of amphibians. David Wake, a professor in Hayes' department, said that Hayes may have had the greatest potential of anyone in the field, but when Hayes discovered that atrazine might impede the sexual development of frogs, his dealings with Syngenta became strained, and in November of 2000, he ended his relationship with the company. Hayes continued studying atrazine on his own, and soon he became convinced that Syngenta representatives were following him to conferences around the world. He worried that the company was orchestrating a campaign to destroy his reputation. He complained that wherever he gave talks, there was a stranger in the back of the room taking notes. On a trip to DC in 2003, he stayed at a different hotel each night. This sounds like something people do when they think they're being watched by the CIA. But if you consider for a second the corporatist nature of our government, and I actually have like a personal anecdote to this, where how agribusiness will go through great lengths to completely fuck over individuals who represent a threat to the status quo. Another time, another story. But it's not like big agriculture represents one of those pillars of our corporatist society that will go through great lengths to completely ruin your reputation, because there's so much money embedded into how the things have been going up to this point, and they want that they want that machine to keep going the way it's supposed to be going. They don't want to change anything. So for years, despite his achievements, Hayes had felt like an interloper in academic settings. It seemed to us that his colleagues were operating according to a frivolous code of manners. They spoke so formally, fashioning themselves as detached authorities, and rarely admitted what they didn't know. He had grown up in Colombia, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Let's keep going down. So here we go. They moved to Berkeley, where Hayes enrolled in the university's program in integrated biology. He completed his PhD in 3.5 years and was immediately hired by the department. He became one of the few Black tenured biology professors in the country. He won Berkeley's highest award for teaching and ran the most racially diverse lab in his department, attracting students who were the first in their families to go to college. Nigel Noriega, a former graduate student, said the lab was a comfort zone for students who were just suffocating at Berkeley because they felt alienated from his academic culture. Okay, so Hayes was not just some fringe guy. He had bona fides, and he was at the top of his field. Let's see. So, okay. I'm just looking through this really quick. Okay. So, Hayes has devoted the past 15 years, okay, so this is long after Syngenta did the original study with him and they parted ways. He had devoted the past 15 years to studying atrazine, and during that time, scientists around the world have expanded on his findings, suggesting that the herbicide is associated with birth defects in humans as well as in animals. The company documents show that, company being Syngenta, while Hayes was studying atrazine, Syngenta was studying him, as he had long suspected. Syngenta's public relations team had drafted a list of 4 goals. The first was discredit Hayes. In a spiral-bound notebook, Syngenta's communications manager, Sherry Ford, who referred to Hayes by his initials, wrote that the company could prevent citing of TH data by revealing him as non-credible. He was a frequent topic of conversation at company meetings. Syngenta looked for ways to exploit Hayes' faults and problems. If Hayes involved in a scandal, enviros will drop him, Ford wrote. She observed that Hayes grew up in a world that wouldn't accept him, needs adulation, doesn't sleep, was scared for life. What's motivating Hayes? Basic question. Syngenta, which is based in Basel, sells more than $14 billion worth of seeds and pesticides a year and funds research at some 400 academic institutions around the world. Oh, what does that sound like? Sounds a lot like Monsanto, doesn't it? Interesting. When Hayes agreed to do experiments for the company, which at the time was part of a larger corporation, Novartis, which we are also familiar with, big pharma company, the students in the lab expressed concern that biotech companies were buying up universities and that industry funding would compromise the objectivity of their research. Hayes assured them that his fee, $125,000, would make their lab more rigorous. He could employ more students, buy new equipment, and raise more frogs. Though the lab was well-funded, federal support for research was growing, increasingly unstable, and like many academics and administrators, he felt that he should find new sources of revenue. I went into it as if we're a painter performing a service, Hayes told me. You commissioned it, and I come up with the results, and you do what you want with them. It's your responsibility, not mine. Atrazine is the second most widely used herbicide in the U.S., where sales are estimated at about $300 million per year. Introduced in 1958, it is cheap to produce and controls a broad range of weeds. Glyphosate, which is produced by Monsanto, is the most popular. A study by the EPA found that without atrazine, the national corn yield would fall by 6%, creating an annual loss of nearly $2 billion. But the herbicides degrade slowly in soil and often washes into our streams and lakes, where it doesn't readily dissolve. Atrazine is one of the most common contaminants of drinking water, and estimated 30 million Americans are exposed to trace amounts of the chemical. Okay, In 1994, the EPA expressed concerns about atrazine's health effects. Not just Alex Jones, not just some quack scientists, not just Peterson. The EPA itself, about 30 years ago, expressed health concerns. Announced that it would start a scientific review. Syngenta assembled a panel of scientists and professors through a consulting firm called EcoRisk to study their herbicide. Hayes eventually joined the group. His first experiment showed that male tadpoles exposed to atrazine developed less muscle surrounding their vocal cords, and he hypothesized that the chemical had the potential to reduce testosterone levels. I've been losing a lot of sleep over this, he wrote. I realized the implications and, of course, want to make sure that everything possible has been done and controlled for. After a conference call, he was surprised by the way the company kept critiquing what seemed to be a trivial aspects of his work. Hayes wanted to repeat and validate his experiments and complained that the company was slowing him down and independent scientists would publish similar results before he could. He decided to resign from the panel, writing in a letter that he didn't want to be scooped. I fear that my reputation will be damaged if I continue my relationship and associated low production with Novartis, he wrote. It'll appear to my colleagues I have been part of a plan to bury important data. So I'll share the article later, but you can kind of see that he went in there with the best of intentions. You know, he was hired by this company, Syngenta, and he ended up getting smeared because he was like, oh, this stuff that you guys use, that's like, it's, you guys know about glyphosate. Glyphosate is what Monsanto uses for herbicide. It's Roundup. Syngenta's atrazine is Syngenta's version of Roundup, okay? And having also terrible effects. So that being said, now that we kind of have a baseline and we saw that the EPA actually, you know, has been studying this stuff for over 30 years, let's see what the EPA has to say about the chemical itself. Give me just a second here. Atrazine. All right. So atrazine is a chlorinated blah, blah, blah herbicide that is used to selectively control annual grasses and broadleaf weeds before they emerge. Pesticide products containing atrazine are registered for use on several agricultural crops, with the highest use on field corn, sweet corn, sorghum, and sugarcane. Additionally, atrazine products are registered for use on wheat, macadamia nuts, and guava, as well as non-agricultural use such as nursery, ornamental, and turf. Okay. So there's been some updates as of late. Basically, what happened was the EPA actually wanted to lower the amount of acceptable, like what's acceptable for human consumption, from 15 points per million to like 3.4 points per million. And of course, Syngenta pushed back on that and said, oh, it's going to affect 80% of the corn crops. You know, we're going to lose all our money. So there's been kind of this back and forth. Here we go. Since 1994, when this stuff has been studied, even back here up in 2022, 2023, it's still being studied today and still being inconclusive, and Syngenta is still using it, okay? So it's not like this stuff hasn't been studied and this is like a new thing. This has been going on for decades. So now let's kind of move on a little bit and let me see. We can get into, let me see what this study is. Okay, so let's get into the actual Berkeley study. So this is the study that Hayes ended up releasing and that Berkeley College ended up releasing. And I'm going to go through it and just show like really easy to find this stuff, not difficult. So here's Berkeley News, UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, not like some Joe Schmo lab in a garage. Top, the header says pesticide atrazine can turn male frogs into females. This is from 2010. Atrazine, one of the world's most widely used pesticides, wreaked havoc on the sex lives of adult male frogs, emasculating 3/4 of them and turning 1 in 10 into females, according to a new study of University of California, Berkeley biologists. Okay, so right there, if it's 3/4 of them, emasculating 3/4 of them. So that's essentially saying it's sterilizing 3/4 of them and turning 1 out of 10 into females. So not necessarily, and I mean, you did mention in the other thing that's turning them gay. Obviously, like that's not the most important part here. The 75% that are chemically castrated are essentially quote unquote dead because of their inability to reproduce in the wild. These male frogs are missing testosterone and all the things that the testosterone controls, including sperm. So their fertility is as low as 10% in some cases, and that is only if we isolate those animals and pair them with females. In an environment where they are competing with unexposed animals, they have zero chance of reproducing. The 10% or more that turn from males into females, something not known to occur under national conditions in amphibians, can successfully mate with male frogs, but because these females are genetically male, all their offspring are male. When we grow these guys up, depending on the family, we will get anywhere from 10 to 50% females. In a population, the genetically male females can decrease or wipe out a population just because they skew sex ratios so badly. Through the experiments were performed on a common laboratory frog, the African clawed frog, field studies indicate that atrazine, a potent endocrine disruptor, similarly affects frogs in the wild and could possibly be one of the cases of amphibian declines around the globe. In last week's issue of Journal of Experimental Biology, Hayes and his colleagues published a review of the possible causes of worldwide decline in amphibian populations, concluding that atrazine and other hormone-disrupting pollutants are a likely contributor because they affect recruitment of new individuals and make amphibians more susceptible to disease. Okay, so again, right there, we can see clear as day that there's been studies that have come with conclusive evidence, like not just like 1%, not just a couple percent, 10% are turning into females, 75% are being emasculated. That's not a fringe conspiracy. That's these backed up by college data, by scientific data. So it's not that it might be happening. It's not some quack conspiracy theory. It's happening. Now we already know how terrible glyphosate is and Roundup is, but this stuff is used. It's the second most common herbicide used in our country, and we shouldn't just be pretending that it's a quack thing because Alex Jones was in a frog costume one day, because it's definitely messing us up and messing with our hormones. Now it's messing up with frog and amphibian hormones. It stands to reasoning. How is that impacting humans? So let's kind of look a little bit further and kind of transition going from, the Alex Jones turning the frogs gay thing and starting to go into how this could be impacting humans on a daily basis. So give me just a second here while I find which one I want to go to. Okay, so again, like I said earlier, I was finding most of the stuff from government websites, NIH, National Institute of Health. Atrazine induces complete feminization and chemical castration in male African clawed frogs. Okay, so just what I've been saying. NIH confirming it. In addition to its persistence, mobility, and widespread contamination of water, atrazine is also a concern because several studies have shown that atrazine is a potent endocrine disruptor active in the parts per billion range in fish, amphibians, reptiles, and human cell lines, and at higher doses in reptiles and birds and lab rodents. Atrazine seems to be most potent in amphibians, where it is at active levels as low as 1.1 parts per billion. Although a few studies suggest that atrazine has no effect on amphibians under certain lab conditions, in other studies, atrazine reduces testicular volume, reduces germ cell and Sertoli cell numbers, induces hermaphroditism, reduces testosterone, and induces testicular oogenesis. I don't know what that is, but it sounds bad. Furthermore, atrazine contamination is associated with demasculization and feminization of amphibians in agriculture areas where atrazine is used, and directly correlated with atrazine contamination in the wild. Okay, so this is kind of the point where you heard RFK kind of making the suggestion that the chemicals in our food and water supply are contributing to kind of the trans movement. Now, that's not to say it's part of like gender ideology. That's something that's a mental thing that's completely different. But there is evidence to suggest that these chemicals are feminizing people, emasculating them. It's impacting their reproductive growth, creating the wrong reproductive organs, or like harming the reproductive organs. So there's there's a lot of evidence to say that this stuff is having very significant impact over the course of, and this stuff's been used for over 20 years, 30 years. We can't even comprehend how bad. Well, we have some studies I'll get to. We can't even comprehend how atrazine alone has impacted, our population numbers. Because it's obviously has this impact where it's impacting our ability to reproduce. So going on from that, again, that was National Institute of Health. That's not some quack shit. So I'm doing the best I can not to go off of like third-party sites. But what I do want to show you guys, just because it's funny to me, is let's see Syngenta's site. It's going to look a lot like something you might see from Monsanto. Oh, they look so happy, helping fight climate change, of course. I'm sure the guys are checking off all their ESG boxes. But you see they do the same exact shit that Monsanto does. Herbicides and seeds. They do GMOs and they douse them in fucking atrazine, okay? Like, that's what they do. It's like Syngenta, like whatever this company is called. What's it called? Syngenta, okay? Syngenta. Get that in your head. Maybe not as big as Monsanto, but they're the second biggest, okay? So that's also a concern. But what's funny is that Syngenta also created the atrazine website. So I'm going to show you guys a couple tricks here really quick. So, let's go to atrazine.com. Look, it's got Syngenta's logo on it. And here's their propaganda. Atrazine's effectiveness and safety is well documented throughout the United States and around the world, with more than 7,000 scientific studies conducted on the product. For more than 60 years, atrazine has been the backbone of effective, affordable weed control from corn, sorghum, and sugarcane farmers. Each year, atrazine supports 85,000 American jobs in the agriculture industry, along with related herbicides, simazine. Atrazine helps save U.S. consumers an estimated $4.3 to almost $6.2 billion annually, primarily in lower prices for meat, eggs, dairy products, and ethanol from fuel. Now, let's go to the updates really quick, because this is what I was talking about earlier, where they're kind of going head-to-head with the EPA a little bit. So, atrazine, regulatory update. No, I will not give feedback. EPA's reevaluation of the current level of concern, okay? So this is just as of last year, okay? So whatever Alex Jones did, complaining about the frogs being gay back in 2015, 2016, it's nice that here we are in 2022 that these things are being explored again. So we have to give Alex Jones some credit, even though he was hyperbolic and kind of did things in a way that may have not been the most professional and brought the most awareness to it. But we can see that the EPA has pushed back on atrazine. So let's read through this a little bit. So on June 30th, 2022, EPA announced it has reevaluated the current atrazine levels of concern, that's LOC, which is 15 parts per billion, and quote unquote determined in its proposed revised interim registration review decision that the LOC is 3.4 points per billion, with additional label mitigation measures required for atrazine use. And then, so what they're saying is, the EPA is like, oh shit, too much corporate capture. When we decided that it was 15 points per billion, that parts per billion, that was obviously way too high. 20% of that, more than 20% of that at 3.4 points per parts per billion, it's probably still way too high, but it's getting pushed back by Syngenta. In its June 30th announcement, EPA stated, after considering comments on the proposed revisions to the atrazine ID, EPA will determine if any changes are warranted to the proposed revisions and then release its decision on this reevaluation. The agency also intends to seek external peer review on the risks to the aquatic plant community that underlies the proposed risk management strategy. EPA's decision to adopt an atrazine level of concern of 3.4 parts per billion is inconsistent with the scientific and regulatory record and contrary to the advice provided by several FIFRA scientific advisory panels. That's actually bullshit. At this point, it is difficult to predict when the atrazine label mitigation measures will be finalized, but EPA could require that they be implemented as soon as fall 2023 and in effect for the 2024 growing season. The impact on farmers due to these changes is significant and unprecedented. Level of concern of 3.4 parts per billion would impact over 65 million acres of corn, sorghum, and sugarcane, over 70% of all corn acres. Okay, so that's a little propaganda from Syngenta. Now, I just wanted to show you guys something really quick because it's not uncommon for companies trying to cover their ass to buy domains to make it look like they're not the ones who own this stuff. But there's this great little thing. I don't know if how many people know about it, called what's it called? It's called Whois Lookup. And so if you're ever curious who's running a website or who bought a website, or like, is this website owned by the same company that like is trying to smear these people, or are these people have a motive behind it? Type in Whois. It's like a GoDaddy thing. It's like whois.com. All it is gives you all the information about the registrant, the person who registered the website. So atrazine.com, who's the registrant? Organization, Syngenta Participations AG. Okay, so they bought atrazine to do their own propaganda. I just wanted to show you guys that because it's a good little research tool to know that if you're ever curious in the future, be like, I'm not totally sure. This looks like propaganda. This looks like an op. This looks like it's set up there to kind of throw me off. And you can kind of put the pieces together. Sometimes that stuff's totally masked, but other times you can put the pieces together and start to see that a website is connected to. You can see where the ulterior motives are coming from based on seeing who owns the website. So that being said, we're starting to get a picture where like as early as last year, the EPA has been pushing back. Now it stands to reason. I wonder if, the pandemic, because you had people like RFK pushing back on the COVID narrative, if bringing up atrazine came, I don't remember atrazine or glyphosate or anything like that being more in conversation over the course of the last 3 years than it was before. But I'd like to think that maybe the government kind of overstepped its bounds and went a little bit too far with trying to control everybody, that when people started questioning the science behind COVID, they started questioning stuff behind stuff like glyphosate and atrazine. And that's why the EPA came back and was like, okay, Syngenta, like, I know we've been hooking you up for the last 60 years, but we got to actually regulate this a bit more. And they're still getting pushback. So I just wanted to show you guys that really quick. Now I think I'm going to pivot a little bit and kind of go into more. Oh yeah, here's another thing just to show you guys this really quick. So this is another website that Syngenta made just to smear Tyrone Hayes, the guy who came up with the study that showed that the frogs were getting feminized, and to kind of do a propaganda piece on how atrazine is great for the environment. I'm not even going to bother reading it. I'm not even going to bother going into it. But this is just like crazy propaganda. So they just showing you that they go out of their way. These Syngenta, this company, they buying other domains to protect themselves, to try and promote atrazine as being some healthy thing that the world needs. So it's good to know there. But let's pivot a little bit into talking more generally about endocrine disrupting chemicals. So to start off with, let's pull up this article from The Guardian from 2018. Falling sperm counts threaten human survival, experts warn. Epidemiologist Shana Swan says low sperm count changes to sexual development could endanger human species. Okay, so this isn't a joke. This isn't like a little thing. This isn't just something that people talk about every couple years. There's a significant issue. So falling sperm counts and changes to sexual development are threatening human survival and leading to a fertility crisis, a leading epidemiologist has warned. The current state of reproductive affairs can't continue much longer without threatening human survival. It comes after a study she co-authored in 2017 found that sperm counts in the West had plummeted by 59%. 59% between 1973 and 2011. Now, Swan says, following current projections, sperm counts are set to reach 0 in 2045. That's a little concerning, to say the least. In the book, Swan and co-author Stacy Colino explore how modern life is threatening sperm counts, changing male and female reproductive development, and endangering human life. It points to lifestyle and chemical exposures that are changing and threatening human sexual development and fertility, such as the gravity of the threats they pose. She argues that humans could end up becoming an endangered species. Of 5 possible criteria for what makes species endangered, Swan writes, only one needs to be met. The current state of affairs for humans meets at least 3. Swan offers advice on how to protect themselves from damaging chemicals and urges his people to do what we can to safeguard our fertility, the fate of mankind, and the planet. Between 1964 and 2018, the global fertility rate from 5.06 births per woman to 2.4. Okay, so that's at 59%. Now, approximately half the world's countries have fertility rates below 2.1, the population replacement level. Wait, what? I just skimmed over this last time. So we're now at the point where you can start arguing, you can make the eugenics case, because they're saying that our fertility has dropped below rates that we can't keep up with growth. So we're going to keep this is a depopulation comment right here. This is depopulation rhetoric. They're basically saying that our fertility is so low that numbers will continue to drop. The human population will actually decrease. While contraception, cultural shifts, and the cost of having children are likely to be contributing factors, Swan warns of indicators that suggest there are also biological reasons, including increasing miscarriage rates, more genital abnormalities among young boys, and earlier puberty for girls. Swan blames everywhere chemicals, like PFAS, forever chemicals, found in plastics, cosmetics, and pesticides that affect endocrines, such as phthalates, which is basically plastics, and BPA. Chemicals in our environment and unhealthy lifestyle practices in our modern world are disrupting our hormone balance, causing various degrees of reproductive havoc, she writes. She also says factors like tobacco, weed, and growing obesity play a role. Okay, so she makes it very clear that yes, there are other factors, but the chemicals that we are exposed to on a daily basis are without a doubt contributing to the drop in our on sperm rates. 59% in the last 60 years. That's unprecedented. Okay? Like, we've talked about how there's a rate, the rate of autism is growing across the world from 1 in 3,000 to 1 in 38. And now we're seeing that fertility rates for men, sperm rates, have dropped by 59%. And now we can no longer keep up with the rate of growth for the human population. Okay? Serious problems. Again, like Jordan Cheriton, it doesn't take much more than a couple hours of research coming across government websites just loaded with this information. So I was actually shocked, and I was even going to talk about fluoride today. And I was like, I can't talk about fluoride today because there's so much information just on atrazine and endocrine disrupting chemicals. It's actually amazing that they've been studying this stuff for decades, like 20, 30, 40 years. And what's crazy is that you can see that there's been so much regulatory capture that's taken place over the last few decades that, it's not a new phenomenon in America where we have no regulation and the corporations get away with whatever they want. This has been going on for decades. And seeing all the chemicals that are fucking up our reproductive systems and that stuff coming to light, just doing a little bit of research, is absolutely shocking. And it's showing that the EPA isn't doing its fucking job. No questions asked. They're completely failing, and they're working for they completely corporate captured. We can obviously look to something like East Palestine and see how that was done as a corollary to see how the EPA just has no interest in taking care of people and is completely covering the asses of companies like Syngenta or Norfolk Southern or Monsanto, you name it. These companies that are giving us this poison that we eat every day are the ones being protected by the EPA instead of the EPA protecting us. Okay. Again, I wanted to talk about fluoride today because there's so much great information on fluoride that's come out recently, thanks to people like Derek Bros. But I'll probably cover that on a whole nother topic, just because just going into endocrine disrupting chemicals is pretty new to me and kind of complex, and I'm not a science dude, so that stuff kind of goes over my head a lot anyway. And I just wanted to touch upon this and show that there's literally nothing in our food, our air, our water that is safe. We wake up in the morning, we're having EDCs in our body. We go to bed at night, there's EDCs in our body. We take a shower, we're getting EDCs put in our body. We cannot get away from it. So let's see. Let's take a look at my list and see what's coming out next. Okay. Okay, so I want to pull this up. So I'm starting to shift over to a more broad topic about EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals. Now, just to basically what EDCs are for people who don't know or didn't kind of gather what I was saying through. Hold on a second, I screwed up. Where'd it go? Just for what EDCs are is just chemicals in our either our atmosphere or in the water or in our food or anything like that that interrupt our endocrine system. So they impact our reproductive organs, they impact our, stuff like puberty, they, just fundamentally impact the human condition in a very negative way. This is something that's been going on for years, but I didn't really pay attention to it, didn't think much of it. And like I wish I wasn't just such a shit lib and just like totally into just mainstream media over the years until the last few years, because like I drank a lot of tap water. I didn't care much of it. I had a well in one of the houses I had growing up, but like I drank a lot of tap water and I feel so foolish about it. But like even taking a shower, you're getting bombarded with endocrine disrupting chemicals. Okay, you cannot get away from it. So to kind of go back and talk about how, we've actually been addressing this stuff, and there's actually precedent where in the past there were substances that were EDCs that were taken off the market because they were found to be so harmful, and we're still experiencing the impact of those things that were taken off the market today. Okay, so one of those is called DES, which I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, diethylstilbestrol. Okay, but basically this was an EDC that was prescribed way back in the day. Okay, this was prescribed back in like the 30s through the 70s. Okay, to women as a synthetic form of estrogen. Okay, and it was banned after 1970 or 71. The number of women who took DES is hard to know precisely, but it's estimated that over 10 million people have been exposed around the world. DES was classified in the year 2000 as a carcinogen to humans. The deleterious effects induced by DES are very extensive, such as abnormalities or cancers of the genital tract and breast, neurodevelopmental alterations, problems associated with sociosexual behavior, and immune, pancreatic, and cardiovascular disorders. Not only pregnant women, but also their children and grandchildren have been affected. Epigenetic alterations have been detected, and intergenerational effects have been observed. More cohort follow-up studies are needed to establish the DES effects are transgenerational. Even though DES is not currently in use, its effects are still present, and families previously exposed and their later generations deserve continuity of the research studies. Okay. DES was first used for treatment of estrogen deficiencies such as vaginitis and menopausal symptoms, and for the suppression of postpartum lactation. In addition, it was prescribed to pregnant women from 38 to 71 to prevent miscarriages or premature deliveries in the U.S. Even though this scientist presented studies in 53 showing that DES didn't reduce them, DES was prescribed for much longer in the Europe and American countries. Lower income countries constitute a major concern since DES was inexpensive. Okay, just a sidebar for a second there. If you want to go down the eugenics kind of pipeline, you can look at the Gates Foundation and see what they did with what's it called? The jab that they were giving to women as a contraceptive. Oh, Depo-Provera. Okay. Depo-Provera was given to third world countries, and it was just killing off populations. It was killing women. So, this extremely cheap substance is a problem in third world countries or developing countries because it's widely available. So, take that for what you will, put on the tinfoil hat if you want, but there's an argument to be made. Somebody can make the argument that these substances still being available in poorer countries is not a mistake. Okay, and I hate thinking that like the world is just full of eugenicists, but that's kind of the reality that we live in. Lower income countries constitute a major concern since DES was inexpensive, a factor that contributed to the use of this drug even after its withdrawal by the US FDA. This estrogenic endocrine disrupting chemical was forbidden because it caused clear cell adenocarcinoma of the vagina and cervix in young women, and the daughters of them, whose mothers took DES while pregnant. Wow. Okay, so the daughters could end up with cancer just by virtue that their parents took it while they were pregnant. DES was used until 78 to suppress postpartum lactation, until 77 to treat menopause symptoms, as a postcoital contraceptive, and as a treatment for advanced postmenopausal breast cancer. Since then, it has been replaced by tamoxifen, a drug with better results to treat breast cancer, although in some cases DES was used for this purpose for a longer time. In addition, DES was used until 1985, when it was replaced by some other drug to treat advanced prostate cancer. However, DES is still used in lower and middle income countries as a treatment for castration-resistant prostate cancer. Okay, so that's probably good for there. So I just wanted to give up an example. Oh yeah, and Snow Himbo said the thalidomide. That's exactly another one. So same idea. So there's tons of examples, as you can see, with Snow Himbo mentioning thalidomide. That was another one they created. Absolutely terrible. Although I don't think thalidomide have in fact impacted as many kids as DES actually. I think thalidomide was like thousands of kids. I don't think we're talking about millions here. But this is just one example where there was an endocrine disrupting chemical that they were using back in the 30s, knew it was bad, and banned it in like the 70s and 80s, and it's still used in poor countries today. So, again, you can't make the argument that EDCs aren't a thing or it's a conspiracy theory. It's happening, it's impacting people, and you can even go so far to make the argument that there's some eugenics fuckery going on. You don't see these oligarchs kind of getting all upset that, oh my God, like we're feminizing people, and sperm counts have dropped by 59%. Nobody's having that conversation. That article I pulled up with Guardian was from 2018. Like, they're not talking about this stuff enough. So I know this isn't the most recent news, but we literally have this stuff every day. Every day it's in our system. When I started researching this stuff, I started getting like almost like crazed, because you can't get away from it. It's everywhere. It comes off of the plastics on our cell phone cases. It comes off of the plastics in our water bottles. It's like it's on everything. So it's just a very, very, very significant problem, and they just get away with it. So I'm going to pivot a little bit more into the EDCs and start to get into how going from beyond the pesticides and getting into the every use products. So I want to get into how we're looking at stuff that we use every single day, and how it impacts us. So I just want to show us really quickly, like, why did they start? I don't think they really banned BPA. I think you can still get BPA all over the place, but BPA is just like a type of plastic. But the effects of BPA can be pretty bad. So endocrine disrupting effects of bisphenol A, as you guys know, of BPA exposure, and recent advances on its removal by water treatment systems. So it's an organic synthetic compound used as an additive in the production of polycarbonate plastics and epoxy. BPA is a reproductive, developmental, and systemic toxicant, often classified as endocrine disrupting compound. BPA absorption into the body can result in the development of metabolic disorders, such as low sex-specific neurodevelopment, immune toxicity, neurotoxicity, and interference with cellular pathway. Therefore, the presence of BPA and its analogs in the environment has recently attracted global attention. Scroll down a little bit more. Let's see. Let's get into findings. Give me 1 second here. Okay. So, effects on reproductive and endocrine function of BPA. Several reports have been published from human and experimental studies describing effects of BPA exposure. Generally, BPA acts on a hormonal level by distorting hormonal balance and inducing estrogenic effects through binding with estrogen-related receptors. The resulting effects are numerous, of which hormonal-related abnormalities have mostly reported. BPA was reported to trigger an early onset development of sexual characteristics and obesity. Okay, guys, so this is like BPA. We're talking about water bottles. Okay, so just using a water bottle made out of plastic, you're still getting fumes and dust and particles of BPA into your system. It's not safe. In males, exposure to high serum concentrate of BPA, especially during developmental stage, resulted in feminization of male fetuses, testicular and epididymal atrophy, alteration of sperm parameters, and reduction of testosterone levels. Possible mechanism is that BPA induces this thing. Many studies have shown that the overall effects of BPA on the male reproductive system is shown to be more pronounced in the fetal period. Okay, so if your mom was using plastics that had a lot of BPA in them while she was pregnant with you, you would be impacted by the effects of BPA prenatally. So I just want to show that really quick. Obviously, there's been a push throughout the years for us to stop using BPA, and you'll see like BPA free. But that being said, they replaced it with this other thing called BPS, which is not much better. So the BPA replacement also interferes with the endocrine system at low doses. So a study published in the scientific peer-reviewed journal Environmental Health Perspectives found that BPS, a BPA substitute, also disrupts the endocrine system and causes cell death at low doses. Researchers from the University of Texas investigated the influence of BPS on signaling pathways in rat pituitary cells. They found that BPS greatly enhanced estradiol-induced activity in some enzymes. Like the natural sex hormone estradiol, BPS caused cell proliferation at low concentration. Together with estradiol, BPS also led to cell death and inhibited estradiol-produced prolactin release. Prolactin is a hormone that controls lactation during breastfeeding. BPS has been introduced in some packaging manufacturers as a replacement for the controversial substance BPA. As BPA, the chemical is used as a starting compound for polycarbonate plastics and epoxy resin, and in the coating of thermal paper receipts. Thermal paper receipts. So when somebody prints out a receipt that you get from the restaurant, or you get from the convenience store, you get from the gas station, that has BPA on it. Okay, so every time you pick up that receipt, you're getting BPA on your fingers, and then you're inhaling it. Its use is likely to become more widespread as BPA continues to be under discussion. Earlier studies have shown that BPS mimicked estrogen at higher doses. Jesus Christ. Okay. So they're trying to say, hey, it's not BPA anymore. It's BPS now, and BPS is no better. Now let's kind of get into what one of the other big things. So let's talk a little bit about PVC. Since this came up quite a bit, I wanted to show a little bit. This is like the crazy stuff. So this is where we get into literally DEHP. This is like what's used in PVC. This is what's used in vinyl. This is everywhere. Food packaging, you name it. So food constitutes an important exposure path to the plasticizer DHHP. The substance which makes plastics flexible has been found in the environment and in human urine. This is undesirable as the substance has a damaging effect on the reproductive organs, which can impair the fertility and development of unborn children. DHP may not be used in toys or cosmetics for this reason. Well, it actually is used in toys for this reason, and we'll get to that in a second. Maybe not in Germany, though. Overall, the quantity ingested by almost all people is small, and therefore a health risk usually does not exist. In the worst case, small children can have higher levels of exposure because they not only ingest DHP through their food, but also through house dust on floors and other objects they put in their mouth. Even then, intake quantities are still low in most cases. However, it cannot be excluded that the intake quantities tolerable for health are exceeded by a small percentage of the population. So that was just kind of a starter there. But I wanted to get into showing what the U.S. Okay, so this one's kind of funny. So this is California, obviously one of the most liberal states in our country. You know how they are, and I haven't looked at what's the standard across the rest of the country, but like California is as liberal as it gets. So you think that they would come down really hard on phthalates more than any other state. So let's see what they have to say about it. What are phthalates found in? Shower curtains, furniture, automobile upholstery, garden hoses, floor tiles, coverings on wires and cables, rainwear and shoes, lunch boxes. Who uses lunch boxes? Children. Binders and backpacks, also used by children. Plastic food packaging and materials, medical devices and equipment, including some types of blood and intravenous solution bags, tubing for dialysis, feeding tubes, oxygen masks, and surgical gloves. Okay. So this is like a carcinogen, okay, that's in everything. So that's just California. That's California's attempt to try and temp down on phthalates. Just to give you guys a contrast a bit, let's look at, I think this is Australia. This is what Australia standard, Australian government, okay? So this is what they have phthalates in, okay? How they describe it, it makes plastic more flexible. Primary use is several plasticizers in polyvinyl chloride, PVC resins, and fabricating flexible vinyl products. So you can imagine it's in everything. So let's see what it's found in. Where is it? Consumer products. It's a PVC products like toys, vinyl upholstery, shower curtains, adhesives, and coatings. It is also used in some food packaging and medical product containers. And equipment is also used in some inks, pesticides, cosmetics, and vacuum pump oil. So I just wanted to show you guys a whole country, excuse me, it's used in everything. And this stuff is a carcinogen. This stuff is an endocrine disrupting chemical. It messes up your reproductive organs. It can feminize you. Really, really nasty stuff. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. So, yes. All right. So, what I wanted to show, so this DHAP, DEHP, or phthalates, okay, this is the plasticizers. This is what they use as like an additive in PVCs and stuff like that to make stuff more flexible. They've already done studies on it. This one's from 2016. The general exposure of EDCs, endocrine disruptors, including phthalates, is considered as one of the reasons diminished sperm count and deteriorated sperm quality. Again, this is National Institute of Health, okay, which may lead to infertility and higher incidence of congenital malformations of the genital tract. This article describes the effects of selected phthalates, DEHP, okay, among others, on the male gametes, reproduction, and the offspring of exposed animals. Results of several papers in vitro showed that above-mentioned phthalates are weakly estrogenic, whereas in vivo studies showed that they have rather anti-androgenic abilities. Review of papers regarding 2 laboratory animals confirmed that phthalates cause diminished sperm counts, increased frequency of abnormal spermatoza, and DNA damage in germ cells. DNA damage. So that's especially after chronic exposure and in case exposure of immature animals. So it's bad, even worse for ostensibly children, young animals. Phthalates may induce in male gametes mutations leading to increased pre- and postnatal mortality of the offspring and to incidence of congenital malformations, growth retardation, delay in sexual development, shortening of anogenital distance in males, disturbances in sex ratio, and diminished quality of semen in F1 generation. Okay, so for the people who want to go down the road, like RFK was saying, that it can lead to kind of this, like people becoming transsexuals, what he's looking at would be the delay in sexual development, okay? Because basically what's kind of becoming the theory here for people who are saying that people are becoming people who are saying that there's an argument to be made that these chemicals are leading people to become trans is actually what's happening is that basically as a result of overexposure to these chemicals, people can become dysphoric And what's ironic, and I'm not really trying to get into that today, is that the medicines that get prescribed, like puberty blockers, that get prescribed to people who want to be affirmed as a different gender than they were born with, actually increase dysphoria. So they actually make it worse. So that's the argument there. If it's changing the way that you go through puberty, and it's changing the way that your reproductive organs are supposed to develop. So like if you were supposed to be born a male, and because of this exposure to chemicals, either pre or postnatally, you're now developing, sort of female traits. I guess you could make the argument that people could be basically chemically transified, I guess. I think I'm not trying to suggest anything, or, that's just kind of my 2 cents, but I could see how people could make that argument. I don't want to go into necessarily like make any more like assumptions based on that, because that's such a new thing to think about. But it's kind of crazy to think about that the chemicals, these endocrine disrupting chemicals, endocrine disrupting compounds, are mess with your body so much that they can change your reproductive function, your reproductive development, and how you and like feminizing males, like that's crazy. So it's something to keep in mind. Again, I'm not trying to go crazy tinfoil hat there, but I think it's interesting that people are making that connection. I'm not sure if I'd go so far to agree with RFK that like it's creating people who are trans. I think a lot of that is many different things, like social contagion, but I could see it as being a factor. So let's keep going down this rabbit hole a little bit more. Okay. So this is weird. So this is kind of like a weird thing. I just wanted to show this because I was like, how did they? So anogenital distance decreases among male infants with prenatal phthalate exposure. Okay. So kids who are exposed to DEHP phthalates prenatally, so while they're in the womb, okay, are shown to have a decrease in anogenital distance. Now, this is a really weird. I'm only bringing this up because I thought it was a really weird correlation that they make, but apparently, this is a correlation that tracks. Okay, so anogenital distance. So bear with me for a second. Is the distance between your butthole and your genitals. Okay, and they say that as that distance decreases, you have a lower sperm count. Okay. So they're saying that they can actually look at somebody's physical appearance for their anogenital distance, and they can see if somebody will have a decreased sperm count or a reproductive deformity, and they can trace it back to phthalates that their mother had while they were pregnant. This is just insane. So, prenatal phthalate exposure impairs testicular function and shortens anogenital distance in male rodents. We present data from the first study to examine AGD and other genital measurements in relation to prenatal phthalate exposure in humans. Okay, so they're just showing that they were able to do these measurements, and they saw that there was a correlation there. So again, absolutely wild. I never would have known that you could measure that distance and come to the conclusion that there's a sperm deficiency there, but apparently they're able to make that distance, and they can see from people coming out of the womb, they can see that if there's a reproductive deformity by looking at the anogenital deficiency. So there's another thing here. Okay, now this is a good one. So I am going to transition a little bit to just talking about them in our water. Okay. So the endocrine disruptors in our water and their effects on the reproductive system. So this is the most shocking thing to me, and there's some good graphs in here. So I just kind of wanted to skim through and show how screwed up this is. So this is anywhere from chlorine to BPA to Atrazine. So let's just kind of look at some of this stuff and see how it's screwing up humans. Give me 1 second here. PFAS, that's forever chemicals. Okay. Oh, okay. Let's see. Reduced testosterone and progesterone levels in the testes, reduced sperm quality and altered expression of 93 proteins. So these are all PFAS. PFAS are forever chemicals, okay? That's like PVC. That's the stuff that blew up at the East Palestine. Okay, this is the stuff that we're exposed to every single day. Again, PFOA, decreased pregnant females per male mouse, decreased litter weight, damaged blood testes barrier, decreased levels of certain proteins and stuff in the testes. But you can see PFAS, they like measuring this stuff. Again, this is the National Institute of Health. This is not some quack study coming from somebody's basement. Okay? This is like they've been measuring this stuff for decades. Okay? Just absolutely insane. So this is just forever chemicals. Okay? And we've just come to accept, instead of trying to get rid of forever chemicals and trying to regulate forever chemicals out of existence, we have so much corporate capture in our country that the forever chemicals, they're called that, and we just are supposed to accept it like it's like a way of life. Oh, well, we've been using harmful chemicals that never disappear for decades. No point regulating it now. Before you're even born, you have forever chemicals in your body. So now let's talk a little bit about BPA. Okay, so they've also measured that. Lumen in the seminiferous tubules, decreased expression of protein level of mRNA. That's interesting. May affect testicular development by decreasing the expression of the mRNA and protein in testes. Increased defects in developing mammary epithelium. BPA exposure causes increased defects in developing mammary epithelium. Okay. Increased number and size and ducts of mammary glands, and treated rats with hyperplasia of their lining. Increased collagen content in connective tissue. BPA induced structural changes affected the proliferation rate of mammary glands. So I'm inferring that to mean that it increased breast growth. I'm not a scientist. Like, a lot of stuff kind of goes over my head, but that's kind of the impression I'm getting there. So look, adults after 20 days. Accelerated premature activation of primordial follicles, and this affected partly reversible by PTAN overexpression. Initiates excessive premature activation of primordial follicles, so it sounds like they start puberty early. Yeah. Induced alterations in progesterone and estradiol serum levels and implantation rate. BPA treatment during the prenatal period perturbs the expression of tight junction proteins in the uterine epithelium, reduces the number of implantation sites. Okay. Let's see if there's any more interesting ones out here. But you can see that they've just been studying this stuff forever, and one thing after another, infertile men, okay? Just on and on and on and on, showing that it hurts like your reproductive organs. Okay, so DHP, this is the phthalates, okay? So this is stuff that we can't get away from, that we see in our plastics every day. Impaired testosterone production, reduced sperm quality, decreased fertility. Prenatal phthalate exposure has adverse reproductive organs in male mice. Okay. Then decreased number of sperm. Abnormal seminiferous tubules. In females, reduced incidence of pregnancy. Damage to ovarian germ cells, fewer smaller corpora lutea. I don't know what that is. Reduced testicular weight. Atrophy of the stuff, chronic inflammation of testes. Jeez, man. Here's another phthalate. Decreased reproductive lifespan, delayed estrus onset. So that means that they hit menopause sooner, I'm guessing. That's crazy. Prolonged estrus, elevated serum FSH and estradiol, altered mRNA expression of steroid genetic enzymes. Okay. So it's starting to go over my head, but you guys can see that they've been documenting this stuff forever, and they can show you that just regular ass plastic, stuff that we use every goddamn day, Okay, stuff that we don't even see, that we just breathe in. Okay, you got like I said, you got like your phone case. Okay, your phone case is probably giving off freaking phthalates that you just inhale. Okay, just you cannot get away from this stuff. You cannot see it. It's in your body at all times. Let me see if there's any more tables in here, but I was just absolutely shocked by this. And again, National Institute of Health. Okay, atrazine. Okay, so this back to Jordan Chariton, National Institute of Health. Okay, buddy, National Institute of Health. Atrazine at 30 days, regular and disordered arrangement of epithelium, decreased spermatoza number, increased spermatoza abnormalities, decreased serum testosterone. Atrazine exposure results in adverse reproductive outcomes in male rats. Okay, so it hurts your sperm count. Delayed onset of puberty and altered estrous cyclicity. So irregular periods, and it makes so people hit their puberty at the wrong time. Again, if you want to put on the tinfoil hat and suggest that these things are creating are a factor in the trans movement, you would look to things where if the brain is developing, if you're developing a male brain and your body isn't going through puberty at the correct rate, then there's an argument to be made that the person whose brain is developing to be a male is going through dysphoria because they still have a child's body and they're not experiencing puberty like a normal person should. Okay, that's the argument, that's how I interpret the argument that RFK makes there. Okay, I would say it's a factor. I would not say it's the main thing. Maybe it's the main thing. This stuff has been going on for decades, but I'm not a scientist. You hear me saying like a lot of stuff goes over my head. Big words here, but you kind of get the impression that it kills sperm rate. You know, it makes it so that you hit your puberty at a later onset, irregular periods. Let's see, shortened anogenital distance. So we talked about that. Okay, where it would actually impact your sperm count. Delayed vaginal opening, decreased number of cycles, day of first estrus delayed. Okay, so late puberty, decreased serum prolactin, so not producing as much prolactin, which is what they produce when they breastfeed. Okay, so it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. But you can see through this, I'll probably link this just because I think it's such a jam-packed full of notes and information here, that it's insane how much data is here showing that atrazine, BPA, phthalates, all this stuff that is in our body every single day is completely fucking up our reproductive systems. Okay, so it keeps going. Okay, so I'll share it on my Twitter just because I think, you know, if you got some reason to check it out. But the shit's absolutely crazy. I find it absolutely insane that how easy it is to find this information. Okay, National Institute of Health. Yes, moobs. It probably is contributing to moobs. I'm not gonna lie. And like I always thought in the back of my head, where you think about the hormones that they're pumping full of cows and chickens, and you see these chickens that are ready to be killed off in these like factory farms after like what 30 or 40 days, and they have breasts out to here. You know, you can't argue with me and say that the hormones that they're putting in our chickens aren't impacting a child's natural reproductive growth. Like that just seems obvious to me that like if you're eating hormones, the hormones are going to impact you in some way, whether you're getting it from a chicken, whether you're getting it from a cow, whether you're getting it from a steroid shot. Like that stuff's fucking with your body. But just again, it was so easy to find this information. National Institute of Health. I'm gonna share that thing about the water supply because it's just so unbelievably prevalent. And like I'm just pulling my hair out because I never thought twice. You know, I should have. I did like filtered water and stuff like that, but I probably would have invested in some serious water filtration systems like reverse osmosis and stuff like that, and fuck getting like the pure filters if I knew what I knew now about this stuff. Like even buying like this, okay? Here's me buying my 80-cent bottle of gallon water. This has DHEP, this has phthalates in it. Okay? So when I'm drinking out of this, I'm having phthalates. That's awesome. I cannot get away from it. So let's see, I think that's I'm pretty close to the end here. Let's see. Yeah, so I think that actually about wraps it up. So again, what really started shocking me was not that this stuff's this stuff's not hard to find, very easy to find. Okay, it's everywhere. Plenty of information going back almost 100 years on this shit. Okay, they started using they were doing that DES stuff. They were giving the synthetic estrogen to women back in 1930s. Okay, they have data going back to the 1930s showing that shit was harmful to people. Okay, we have pages upon pages upon pages upon pages of the National Institute of Health showing tables upon tables showing how atrazine, BPA, BPS, phthalates, stuff that we're exposed to on a daily basis is in our water supply and is regularly harming our sperm counts, regularly making it so women are missing their periods, regularly delaying the onset of puberty, and as some people like to point out, moobs. But it really starts to paint the picture for me how all this really, really bad health isn't just from companies trying to take the easiest route and being cheap, but also that they're using chemicals that are actually literally oh, it's not just a chemical to preserve or be for plastic. Oh, hey, it also helps thin the herd. If you're somebody like Bill Gates who owns all the farmland and is a Malthusian and is all about depopulation, he's had videos talking about how he wants to use jabs to basically dwindle 15% of the population. He's going to be somebody who's going to be all for using this sort of shit because he's all for, hey, I can feed them. And if people end up dying, 5, 6, 10 years earlier than they're supposed to, hey, my eugenics program is still kind of working. So it's extremely concerning. It's nice to see that, with the EPA pushing back on atrazine in 2022, that maybe we'll see a little bit better things come around with atrazine where it's not going to be used quite as much. But at the end of the day, we're not getting away from this stuff. I don't have a solution for this. I just want people to be more aware for this. I want people to see how obvious it is that this stuff is everywhere. And I don't know what to do. But we're stuck, surrounded by forever chemicals, surrounded by phthalates. This stuff is hurting our sperm, and I don't know, and hurting fertility. I don't know how we're going to get over this without some fucking schism, without some freaking crazy paradigm shift in how we deal with our food and water supply. Because the government has no interest in changing our food supply. So this is incredibly concerning. What do? We have to create our own farms. We have to make our own farms. We have to have our own wells. We can't be doing this shit anymore. So I wish I had a happy ending, but this stuff's not looking good. Thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any to wrap up, if you guys have any ideas on some scoops, anything you want to hear me talk about, please hit me up. Feel free to send me a DM on Twitter at 420. You can see. Otherwise, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back next week on next Thursday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and I'll be with Big Mad Crab on Monday with Politically Homeless, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thanks so much. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your friends, and have a great evening, everybody. Take care.